Hello, my name is Michele, and I'm a life coach, and I talk about topics like complex PTSD, NPD, as well as healing emotional wounds. And today I really wanted to focus on the kind of advice that malignant narcissistic mothers give, whether it's their daughters or their sons, how they give advice, what their motives are, and most importantly, what you can do about it. So with that in mind, let's get started. In my face-to-face coaching, I meet a lot of clients that are in such a state of confusion because of being raised by malignant narcissistic mothers. So I'm hoping this video will help anyone that's battling this to start coming out of the fog, so to speak. First of all, let's talk about how malignant narcissistic mothers give advice, because it's very different than how quote-unquote healthy parents give advice. So for example, healthy parents want their children to have a better life than they had. They want them to be prettier, more attractive, more successful. They want them to have all they had and more. And that's kind of what we expect from a parent, right? Nobody loves you more than your parent. There's even a phrase, you have a face only a mother could love. In other words, the whole world could turn on you, but your parent, especially your mother, is the one that's there and will always have your back. Well, that's not the case if that mother is high on the scale of malignant narcissism. And that's why it's so confusing. It's hard to understand that this is my parent, quote unquote, they love me, and yet you have that on one side and their actions and their words on the other side, and it really throws a person into cognitive dissonance. Just to give you a small example, let's say a teenage girl or a young adult meets a guy and it's a really great guy, right? And he's just treating her in a way that she's never been treated before. And she goes to her mother and she says, wow, I've never had anyone. He really listens to me. He cares so much about what I have to say. He's so considerate. He's very laid back. I've never felt so loved and special. Now, a normal mother would be ecstatic, but a narcissistic mother, sadly, sees her daughter's happiness as a personal threat to her. If her daughter is happy, instead of seeing that child's happiness, all the narcissistic mother sees is her own lack of happiness. And it doesn't feel good. And so in order to regulate herself, because that's what all malignant narcissistic parents do, is they utilize their children to emotionally regulate themselves. And so to feel better, she's got to stamp out that happiness. And so she'll say something like, don't trust that too much. It sounds like he's too good to be true, or he's hiding something, or even worse, I wonder what he wants from you to be interested in you. In other words, as if she can't believe that somebody like that would actually like her daughter. Once that thought is planted into the adult child's mind, it takes root, especially if that adult child has not healed yet from cptsd. So it takes root, and sooner or later, that child will sabotage it, because that's the belief system that the malignant narcissist planted within that child, and that's the belief system that's been running in that child for a very long time. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of someone special. I'm not worthy of anything good. So now let's look at the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's say that that same adult child now meets somebody that, whether she realizes it or not, treats her exactly how her malignant narcissistic mother treats her. And she goes to her mom and she's like, I don't know. This doesn't feel good. There's something off. I don't feel comfortable with him. There's something, he's harsh, or he doesn't really seem to care about me. They bring real concerns to the parent. A healthy parent would strengthen that child's trust in self and say, sounds like, you're feeling this or that, and what are you going to do about it? What do you think is best? Well, a malignant narcissistic parent doesn't do that. The narcissistic mother will say, oh, you're being too sensitive. You haven't really given him a chance. You always do that. You always sabotage something good for you. which is a small piece of truth, right? Twisted, and obviously the details of why that happens are left out, but again, boom, that thought is planted into the child's mind. And what happens? That adult child now is striving harder and harder to gain this other person's approval in the same fashion that they strive after their parents' approval. They wind up in a long-term toxic relationship, suffering for years. When we don't realize that malignant narcissistic parents will always act in this fashion, when we don't realize that they really don't have your best interests at heart. And I know that's a really harsh statement and it sounds so final, but when you have all the evidence in front of you, you kind of have to call it as you see it, right? And if somebody consistently sabotages everything good for you and pushes you towards things that aren't good for you, then that person doesn't have your best interest at heart, whether it's a friend, coworker, or sadly, even a parent. And for those that don't realize this, that are just learning about malignant narcissism, until you learn about this, the sad reality is by continually trusting and hoping in this narcissistic parent, two things will happen. One, you will be led down a self-destructive path. Sabotaging thoughts and beliefs will constantly be planted within your mind. You will then make the decisions to sabotage things that are good for you without even realizing it. And then that same parent that actually planted those thoughts in your head will turn around and blame you for it. It's a vicious cycle of chaotic confusion. The second thing that will happen is that sadly, by going to your parent, your malignant narcissistic parent for advice, teaches you to lose trust in yourself, because everything you think is good, you're told isn't. And everything you think is toxic, you're told is good for you. So you completely disconnect from self, your self-trust, and your gut instinct. So what can you do about it? If you're watching this video, you already suspect that you may have a parent like that. So here are some tips that I hope can help you. Part of healing is about letting go. Letting go of expecting a disordered person to act orderly. This is who they are. And when you accept it, I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but it helps you to curb the urge to go to them for advice. And if you struggle to do this, something that can be beneficial or helpful is make a list of all the good advice that they've ever given you and the positive results that came with that good advice. Put that on one side of a piece of paper, and on the other side, list all of the advice, the quote-unquote bad advice that led to detrimental consequences. And once you have that paper, read it often so that your mind breaks out of the cognitive dissonance. Our gut instinct is like a muscle. If we don't exercise, our muscles get weak. But if we consistently exercise, not just once a month, not just once a week, but even the little things we do daily for exercise have a great benefit. So every single day you can do something small that can help you to strengthen your gut instinct. You don't have to wait to the big decisions to practice. It's really starting with the smaller ones that's more helpful. So, for example, if any time you feel the urge to ask someone what they think in order to help you make a decision, even if it's as simple as clothing, when you feel that urge to ask somebody else in order to know what to do, pause and ask yourself, what do I think is best? In other words, check in with yourself. Practice staying true to your feelings and your perceptions in little ways. If somebody asks your advice on something, resist the urge to tell them what you think they want to hear. Rather, ask yourself, how do I really feel? Do I really like that? And in a respectful way, you can agree to disagree with people. And the more you do that, what you're really doing is honoring your own perception, your own likes, your taste, your preferences. One of the sad side effects of having a narcissistic mother is a lack of self-identity. You're not allowed to be you. And every time you think you know who you are, you're told you're not. You're not that. Your personality is rewritten by your narcissistic parent to suit their needs. So there's a huge lack of perception as to who you really are. Well, start to get to know yourself. The clearer your self-identity is, the easier it will be to make decisions and to trust yourself. And even to feel good about yourself, even if others, including a malignant narcissistic parent, sadly make you feel bad every time you're trying to be yourself. Something else that's important if you're going to break out of that cycle of going to a parent for advice and then having them sabotage it is having boundaries. If you don't have any boundaries and you don't even know what boundaries look like, start looking at where you wish things were different. Analyze how you would like the relationship to be. Google information on what healthy boundaries look like and start formulating boundaries with every person in your life. Boundaries aren't bad the way malignant narcissists try to make them feel. Boundaries are normal and they enhance healthy relationships. So start getting to know which boundaries you would like to enforce. So those are some tips that can help if you have a malignant narcissistic parent and you're an adult child of this and you're still stuck in the confusion. If there's any other tips that I missed, feel free to share them with others in the comment section below.